The fluorescent lights of the county courthouse hummed, casting a pallid glow on the worn wooden benches and the stoic faces of those waiting. Detective Miles Corbin, his uniform pressed, his jaw set, felt a familiar surge of self-importance as he approached the witness stand. He was a man who believed in order, in the clear lines between right and wrong, and in his own unwavering judgment. Today's case, a seemingly minor public disturbance charge, felt like a routine victory. He'd handled dozens like it. He glanced briefly at the defendant, a black woman sitting quietly with an air of composure that, to his mind, bordered on defiance. Her name was Commander Eris Thorne, though he'd simply listed her as Thorne Eris in his report, a detail that now felt dismissive in its brevity. Eris Thorne, in a simple dark pantsuit, exuded a quiet power that seemed to ripple beneath her calm exterior. Her hands rested clasped in her lap, her posture ramrod straight, betraying no hint of nervousness. She was a woman in her late 30s, with intelligent, unwavering eyes that held a depth Miles found unsettling. To him, she was just another face in a long line of individuals he'd apprehended, another statistic in his meticulously kept arrest log. He saw her as a prime example of insubordination, a black woman who had dared to question his authority during a routine stop, and now she would face the consequences. His internal narrative, honed by years on the force, painted her as aggressive, uncooperative, and disrespectful of the law. He dismissed her calm demeanor as a facade, a calculated attempt to appear innocent. He had seen it 100 times. Miles had prepared his testimony meticulously. He recounted the events of that humid Tuesday afternoon with practiced ease. The initial call about a minor traffic infraction, his approach to the vehicle, and Commander Thorne's alleged aggressive questioning and failure to comply with his instructions. He emphasized her elevated tone and disregard for established procedure, painting a picture of a confrontational individual who had actively resisted his lawful commands. He omitted certain details, subtly rephrasing others, to ensure the narrative aligned perfectly with his version of events. A textbook case of a civilian disrespecting a police officer. His words, delivered with conviction, aimed to solidify the image of Commander Thorne as volatile and uncooperative. He was the guardian of justice, and she was an obstacle to it. Unbeknownst to Miles, his version of events, carefully constructed and confidently delivered, was a tapestry of subtle untruths woven around a single pivotal moment of misjudgment and ingrained bias. He omitted the part where he had cut her off mid-sentence, the sharp, almost imperceptible flick of his wrist as he dismissed her attempts to explain, or the fact that her elevated tone was a direct, exasperated response to his own escalating condescension. He ignored the professional calm she had maintained, even as his own voice had risen. He believed his perception was reality, and his conviction was absolute. This seemingly minor court appearance, however, held a hidden significance for Commander Thorne. She was indeed a high-ranking Navy SEAL, currently on an unscheduled, deeply classified leave. Her identity, her true purpose for being in this quiet suburban town, was shrouded in layers of military secrecy. This public disturbance charge, however trivial it appeared, was a dangerous ripple in her meticulously controlled life, a catalyst that threatened to expose her, not just to the court, but potentially to elements far more sinister than a local police department. Her presence here was a delicate balancing act, a precise navigation of two wildly different worlds, the quiet precision of her covert operations and the mundane, often chaotic realities of civilian life. The prosecuting attorney, a young, eager woman named Sarah Chen, listened to Detective Corbin's testimony with a nod, her pen scratching notes on her legal pad. She saw only the standard police report, the credible testimony of an experienced officer. To her, this was an open and shut case. She would secure a quick conviction, add it to her growing list of successful prosecutions, and move on. She had no reason to doubt Detective Corbin, no inkling of the extraordinary life led by the silent woman across the courtroom. The defense attorney, a weary public defender named Marcus Thorne, no relation to Eris, though the shared surname was a strange coincidence, seemed resigned. He had seen this play out countless times, an officer's word against a civilian's, especially a black civilian. The odds were stacked against his client. He had advised Commander Thorne to accept a plea bargain, a small fine and community service, to avoid the hassle. But she had refused. Her refusal quiet but firm, a decision he found bafflingly stubborn. Miles Corbin finished his testimony, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He had presented his case, clear and concise. He stepped down, confident in his narrative, unaware that his confidently delivered lies had just set in motion a chain of events that would unravel his own carefully constructed reality. The courtroom, usually a predictable stage, was about to become the backdrop for a profound unmasking, a dramatic revelation that would challenge the perceptions of everyone present, particularly his own. He was the misguided supporter of a system that, in his eyes, was always right, always just. He was so convinced of his own rectitude that he could not conceive of a truth that contradicted his established beliefs. And in that unshakable conviction, he had unknowingly set the stage for his own very public reckoning. The air in the courtroom, usually thick with legal jargon and hushed whispers, felt suddenly charged. Detective Miles Corbin stepped down from the witness stand, a faint air of self-satisfaction clinging to him. He had spun his narrative, confident in its veracity, blissfully unaware that the meticulously crafted lies he'd presented were about to unravel. His eyes flickered towards the defendant, Commander Eris Thorne, expecting to see a flicker of defeat. Instead, he met a gaze that was calm, steady, and unsettlingly unreadable. Eris, for her part, felt a familiar tension coiled deep within her. The courtroom, with its sterile air and performative declarations, felt like a jarring contrast to the high-stakes, precise world she inhabited. Her classified leave, necessitated by an urgent, sensitive personal matter, the sudden disappearance of a close, extended family member, a brilliant scientist whose research had caught the attention of both national and international intelligence agencies, had already thrown her meticulously planned life into disarray. This trivial public disturbance charge, stemming from what she considered Miles Corbin's blatant overreach during a routine traffic stop, was an unwelcome complication, a pebble in the finely tuned machinery of her covert existence. Her instincts, honed by years of navigating hostile environments and parsing subtle threats, screamed at her. Miles Corbin's testimony was a flimsy veil of half-truths, designed to obscure his own procedural missteps and, more disturbingly, his underlying prejudice. He had misrepresented her words, twisted her calm inquiries into aggression, and ignored her clear attempts to de-escalate the situation. The dismissive tone he had adopted, the subtle way his eyes had narrowed when she had spoken, had not escaped her notice. She understood bias, recognized its insidious creep. The public defender, Marcus Thorne, leaned over to her, his voice low. "Commander Thorne, are you sure you don't want to reconsider the plea bargain? It's just a minor charge, a small fine. We can put this behind us quickly." He saw her quiet composure not as strength but as a potential weakness, a sign of someone naive to the harsh realities of the justice system. He genuinely believed he was offering her the best path, a way to avoid prolonging an unwinnable fight. Eris met his weary gaze, her own unwavering. "No, Mr. Thorne," she replied, her voice soft but firm, carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I will not plead guilty to something I did not do. My record, my integrity, is not for negotiation." Her words, simple yet resolute, carried a deeper weight, a reference not just to her civilian record, but to a career built on absolute moral and ethical precision. To concede, even on a minor charge, would be a betrayal of every principle she embodied, every oath she had sworn. It was her save the cat moment, a quiet defiance in the face of overwhelming odds, refusing to compromise her truth for convenience. A flicker of surprise crossed Marcus Thorne's face. He had expected exasperation, not such steely conviction. He had dealt with stubborn clients before, but there was something different about this woman, an almost palpable sense of inner strength that belied her unassuming civilian clothes. The prosecuting attorney, Sarah Chen, now approached the stand, ready to call her next witness. She glanced at Eris, then at the details on her case file. "Commander Eris Thorne," she read aloud, a slight furrow in her brow. The commander title was unusual for a public disturbance case. A military rank. She'd seen it before, but rarely for anything beyond a drunken brawl or a minor assault. never for something so mundane as a traffic stop. She filed the detail away, an interesting anomaly in an otherwise straightforward day. As Miles Corbin settled back into his seat, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips, he allowed himself a moment of smug reflection. He had handled it perfectly. The narrative was solid, the witness testimony airtight. He felt a surge of professional pride. He glanced again at Eris Thorne, who was now leaning forward, speaking quietly to her defense attorney. Stubborn, he thought. They always think they can beat the system. He dismissed her presence, her quiet dignity, as irrelevant. His version of reality was the only one that mattered. This quiet exchange, however, set the stage for the true catalyst. Eris Thorne's unwavering refusal to plead guilty, her insistence on upholding her truth, had just forced a confrontation that Miles Corbin had actively sought to avoid. Her integrity, a force he had deliberately tried to suppress, would now ignite a chain reaction, stripping away his carefully constructed lies and exposing a deeper, more profound truth. The seemingly minor court case had just taken an unexpected, irreversible turn. The judge, a stern but fair woman named Judge Eleanor Vance, looked down at her notes. Prosecution, call your next witness. Sarah Chen stood. The prosecution calls as an expert witness, Dr. Evelyn Reed, head of the Department of Forensic Linguistics at City University. A ripple of surprise went through the courtroom. An expert in forensic linguistics for a public disturbance charge? Marcus Thorne frowned, exchanging a bewildered glance with Eris. This was highly unusual. This level of meticulousness was completely out of proportion for such a minor case. As Dr. Reed, a petite woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, walked towards the witness stand, Eris Thorne felt a cold dread settle in. She knew Dr. Reed, not personally, but by reputation. She was one of the foremost experts in analyzing speech patterns, intonation, and linguistic markers to determine intent, deception, and even psychological profiles. Her work was often used in high-stakes, sensitive government investigations. Why was she here? Unbeknownst to the courtroom, Dr. Reed had been privately consulted by a concerned party connected to Daniel Hayes from the previous story, who, deeply affected by Anya Petrova's unmasking of deception, had begun using his influence to discreetly identify and support individuals who might be unfairly targeted by institutional bias. He had seen the initial police report on Eris Thorne's case, noted the inconsistencies, and discreetly flagged it to Dr. Reed, knowing her expertise could cut through layers of pretense and reveal the truth. He recognized the subtle markers of an unjust system at play, a system he was now committed to challenging. He was a silent, powerful hand, working behind the scenes. As Dr. Reed was sworn in, her gaze, sharp and analytical, swept over the courtroom, lingering for a moment on Miles Corbin, then on Eris Thorne. Miles, observing Dr. Reed's focused attention on him, felt a prickle of unease. Why was she looking at him like that? Dr. Reed's testimony began clinically, detailing her analysis of the audio and video recordings from Miles Corbin's body camera. She spoke of vocal stress indicators, nonverbal cues, and subtle shifts in linguistic patterns that revealed far more than the spoken words. Her calm, academic tone belied the devastating implications of her findings. She pointed out moments where Detective Corbin's own voice had escalated, where his language had become subtly accusatory before Commander Thorne's alleged aggressive responses. She highlighted instances where Commander Thorne's tone remained measured, even as Miles Corbin's became increasingly confrontational. Miles Corbin's face, which had been a picture of smug confidence moments before, began to pale. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This was not how it was supposed to go. This was an attack on his credibility, on his professional judgment. He felt a rising surge of indignation, then a cold fear. Eris Thorne, listening to Dr. Reed's objective, scientific breakdown of the encounter, felt a quiet sense of vindication. Dr. Reed was meticulously dissecting the layers of Miles Corbin's narrative, exposing its inherent biases, not with emotion, but with irrefutable data. The truth, meticulously observed and clinically presented, was finally emerging from the shadows. This was her point of no return. The battle had shifted. It was no longer just about her. It was about exposing a deeper systemic issue, a fight for truth that she would not back down from. Her identity as a high-ranking SEAL, her training in truth and integrity, demanded that she see this through, not just for herself, but for all those who had been similarly misjudged, similarly silenced. The stage was set, not for a simple verdict, but for a profound public unmasking. The sterile hum of the courtroom air conditioning seemed to amplify every word as Dr. Evelyn Reed continued her testimony. Her voice, calm and academic, sliced through the carefully constructed narrative of Detective Miles Corbin. He sat rigid, his face growing paler with each meticulously presented piece of evidence, each objective analysis of his own body camera footage. Dr. Reed's expertise in forensic linguistics was dissecting not just the audio, but the subtle nonverbal cues, the slight shifts in posture, the almost imperceptible changes in vocal tone that revealed the true dynamics of the traffic stop. She highlighted how Miles's voice had carried a discernible edge of condescension from the outset, escalating before Commander Eris Thorne had even uttered a full sentence. She showed with chilling precision how Eris's responses, though firm, consistently maintained a level tone, a stark contrast to Miles's rising frustration. Miles felt a cold sweat prickle his brow. This wasn't just a simple traffic stop anymore. It was an inquisition into his professional conduct, into his very character. He'd never faced such scrutiny. His usual confidence, built on years of unchallenged authority, began to crack. He darted a glance at Eris Thorne, who sat impassively, her face betraying no emotion, no triumph, simply a quiet attentiveness that infuriated him further. He saw her calm as a calculated taunt, a silent defiance that he was determined to crush. This was Eris's unveiling moment, albeit an indirect one, initiated by an external force. She wasn't actively boasting or grandstanding. Rather, the truth of her disciplined nature and the unjust nature of the encounter were being meticulously laid bare by an objective third party. Her quiet composure, once misinterpreted as defiance by Miles, now served as powerful, unspoken evidence of her true character, silently confirming Dr. Reed's analysis. The prosecuting attorney, Sarah Chen, who had initially seen this as an open and shut case, now shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Reed's testimony was compelling, undeniable. The cold, hard data contradicted her initial assumptions, challenging her belief in Miles Corbin's infallible word. A seed of doubt, then dismay, began to sprout in her mind. This was not the quick, easy win she had anticipated. She found herself glancing at Eris Thorne, a flicker of something akin to admiration, or perhaps just bewildered curiosity in her eyes. Who is this woman, she wondered. Marcus Thorne, Eris's public defender, felt a surge of bewildered hope. He had prepared for a losing battle, yet Dr. Reed's testimony was dismantling the prosecution's case with devastating efficiency. He saw the shift in Sarah Chen's posture, the faint unease on the judge's face. He looked at Eris, who gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the turning tide. As Dr. Reed concluded her testimony, detailing the linguistic markers of deceptive intent often found in the aggressor's speech rather than the alleged aggressor's, Miles Corbin felt a wave of righteous indignation wash over him. This expert was twisting the facts, making him out to be the villain. He leaned over to the prosecuting attorney's table, whispering urgently to Sarah Chen. "She's trying to discredit me. This is a smear campaign. She's making me out to be the aggressor." He was a misguided supporter of his own flawed perspective, incapable of seeing how his ingrained biases had colored his judgment. His entire professional identity, his belief in his own moral rectitude, was under attack. He couldn't fathom a reality where he was not the righteous upholder of the law. Sarah Chen, though disturbed by Dr. Reed's findings, still felt a professional loyalty to Detective Corbin. She also worried about the precedent this case might set. Allowing a police officer's testimony to be so thoroughly dismantled in open court was a dangerous path. She gave Miles a strained nod, indicating she would address it. She understood his outrage, even if she was beginning to doubt its foundation. During the cross-examination, Sarah Chen attempted to salvage the prosecution's case, trying to poke holes in Dr. Reed's methodology, suggesting the analysis was subjective, or that a few stress indicators didn't prove deliberate deception. But Dr. Reed remained unshakable, calmly citing peer-reviewed studies and universally accepted forensic linguistic principles. Her composure, coupled with the undeniable scientific backing, made Sarah's efforts seem weak, almost desperate. As the cross-examination concluded, Judge Eleanor Vance cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping the courtroom. Given the new expert testimony, this court finds sufficient grounds to question the veracity of the initial report. Detective Corbin, this court requests you approach the bench. Miles Corbin's stomach dropped. His carefully constructed world was crumbling. He rose, his movement stiff, and approached the judge's bench. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder, a wave of disbelieving whispers that felt like a judgment against him. Detective, Judge Vance began, her voice firm. Dr. Reed's analysis strongly suggests a pattern of behavior inconsistent with your initial testimony. Specifically, her findings indicate that your tone and language were escalatory from the outset, directly contradicting your claim of Commander Thorne's unprovoked aggression. She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. This court will not tolerate perjury. I am ordering an internal review of this incident, and I suggest you review your body camera footage very, very carefully. Miles's face drained of color. An internal review. That could mean suspension, even termination. His carefully built career, his authority, his very livelihood, was suddenly on the brink. He glanced back at Eris Thorne, a flicker of raw, unadulterated fury in his eyes. He blamed her. She had manipulated the situation, somehow orchestrated this elaborate attack on him. He saw her not as a victim, but as a dangerous adversary who had deliberately chosen to expose him. He had to hit back. Hard. As a counterattack from the antagonist, Miles, driven by blind rage and a desperate need to salvage his reputation, decided to escalate. He couldn't let this woman win. He had to uncover something on her, anything, that would discredit her and turn the tables back in his favor. His mind, usually methodical, was now clouded by anger. He would use his network, his connections, to dig into Eris Thorne's background. He would find a reason to discredit her, to prove she was the volatile, disrespectful individual he had painted her to be. His jealousy, his wounded pride, fueled his dangerous resolve. He would show them all. Later that day, after the hearing was adjourned, Miles Corbin sat in his patrol car, his hands clenched tightly on the steering wheel. He replayed the scene in his head, Dr. Reed's calm, damning words echoing in his ears. He pulled out his phone, making a series of terse calls to contacts in various law enforcement agencies, subtly leveraging favors and whispered threats. I need everything you have on Eris Thorne. Every arrest, every incident report, every piece of information. Off the books, no paper trail. He was going rogue, propelled by a vindictive need for vengeance. He wanted to expose her, to make her pay for humiliating him. Meanwhile, Eris Thorne and Marcus Thorne were in a quiet consultation room. Marcus was beaming. Commander Thorne, Dr. Reed's testimony was incredible. We've got a real chance now. I think the judge is leaning towards dismissal. Eris, however, felt a prickle of unease. Her instincts, always finely tuned to potential threats, were telling her something was wrong. Miles Corbin's eyes as he left the courtroom, the raw, desperate fury she had seen there, it was not the look of a defeated man. It was the look of a man about to launch a desperate, dangerous counterattack. Her highly classified mission, the very reason for her unscheduled leave, was already precarious. She was hunting a phantom, a brilliant scientist gone dark, and any public exposure, any official inquiry into her background, could jeopardize everything. Mr. Thorne, Eris said, her voice serious, I appreciate your optimism, but I don't think this is over. Detective Corbin, he won't let this go. He'll dig. Marcus frowned, confused. Dig? What could he possibly find? Your record is clean. Eris looked out the window, her gaze distant. My official civilian record is clean, Mr. Thorne. But my real record, that's a different story. And if he starts digging in the wrong places, he could expose a lot more than just this traffic stop. She knew the layers of secrecy that shrouded her life as a Navy SEAL, the clandestine operations, the classified missions, the identities she had assumed and shed. Any attempt to uncover her true background would be like pulling a loose thread on a highly classified garment, potentially unraveling a tapestry of national security secrets. This minor court case had just expanded into a dangerous, high-stakes game, and her very identity was the ultimate prize. The gauntlet had been thrown, not by the court, but by the wounded pride of a desperate man. The digital hum of the server room was a low, constant drone, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Detective Miles Corbin's mind. His humiliation in court had festered into a burning obsession. He couldn't let Eris Thorne win, couldn't allow his reputation to be tarnished by a cleaning lady, or whatever she truly was. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard, accessing restricted databases, leveraging every favor, every connection he had. Thorne, Eris, he muttered under his breath, watching lines of code and fragmented data scroll across his screen. He was looking for dirt, anything to discredit her, to expose her as the liar he believed her to be. His anger, coupled with a deep-seated bias, blinded him to the ethical lines he was crossing, pulling him further into a dangerous, unsanctioned investigation. Unbeknownst to Miles, his desperate search was a direct assault on the intricately woven fabric of national security. Eris Thorne wasn't just a high-ranking Navy SEAL. She was an operative deeply embedded in a sensitive, ongoing mission. Her unscheduled leave was directly tied to the disappearance of Dr. Elias Vance, a brilliant biogeneticist whose latest research, codenamed Project Nightingale, involved highly volatile and potentially weaponizable synthetic pathogens. Vance, a former colleague and mentor of Eris's deceased father, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only cryptic clues that pointed to a shadowy international organization. Eris's presence in this quiet town was no coincidence. It was a crucial point in her covert investigation, a delicate needle in a haystack search for Vance and his dangerous research. Any breach of her cover, any public scrutiny of her true identity, could jeopardize the mission, putting global security at risk. Miles Corbin's investigation, fueled by vengeance, began to yield unsettling fragments. He found a blank space in her official records from years ago, a period of several years where she simply didn't exist in any conventional database. Then came the anomalies. Multiple addresses listed for the same period, each associated with a different identity, different social security numbers, passport records with unusual stamps from conflict zones, financial transactions routed through shell corporations. None of it made sense for a civilian. It hinted at something far more complex, far more dangerous than a simple public disturbance charge. This was Miles's initial confrontation and unveiling, albeit a forced one. He wasn't choosing to reveal something about Eris, but rather, his aggressive pursuit was accidentally unearthing classified information. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but his twisted logic led him to a single dangerous conclusion. Eris Thorne was a criminal, a phantom, and he was on the verge of exposing her. His wounded pride, his jealousy, morphed into a perverse sense of patriotic duty. He was convinced he was exposing a dangerous operative, not merely salvaging his reputation. He made another call, this time to an old acquaintance in federal law enforcement, a man known for his willingness to bend rules for the right cause. "I've got something big, unofficial," Miles whispered into the phone, his voice hoarse with suppressed excitement. "A civilian, but she's got more holes in her record than Swiss cheese. Smells like a deep-cover operative. Or worse. I think she's tied to something highly illegal." He embellished, he exaggerated, painting a picture of a dangerous, elusive criminal. The old acquaintance, intrigued by the tantalizing hints of a major bust, promised to look into it, leveraging his own resources. The net, unseen by Eris, was tightening around her. Meanwhile, Eris was fully aware of the escalating danger. Her own highly sensitive monitoring systems, subtle but omnipresent, had flagged an unusual surge in inquiries into her identity, originating from unauthorized law enforcement channels. She knew Miles Corbin was digging, and she knew the profound threat this posed to Project Nightingale. Time was running out. Dr. Vance's last cryptic message had indicated he was being held in a secure, abandoned facility, and the window for extraction was rapidly closing. The gauntlet was now fully engaged. It was a race against time on two fronts, locating Dr. Vance and stopping Miles Corbin from inadvertently exposing her, and, by extension, the entire covert operation. Eris knew she had to face Miles directly, but not on his terms, not in a public courtroom where every word could be misconstrued and leaked. She needed a controlled environment, a place where she could assess him and, if necessary, disable his pursuit without revealing too much. Her mind, trained for rapid threat assessment and tactical execution, began to formulate a plan. She knew Miles's patrol routes, his habits, his predictable patterns. She would intercept him, alone, away from any official channels, away from any recording devices. The confrontation came late one night, on a deserted, rain-slicked street on the outskirts of town. Miles Corbin was finishing his shift, his mind still buzzing with the fragments of information he'd unearthed about Eris Thorne. He was so consumed by his vengeful pursuit that he didn't notice the sleek, black, unmarked sedan that had been following him discreetly for the past few miles. As he pulled over for a quick coffee at a dimly lit roadside diner, the sedan pulled up behind him. The driver's side window hummed down. Eris Thorne was behind the wheel, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the diner sign. She wasn't in uniform. She wasn't in a suit. She wore dark, practical clothing that seemed to blend into the night, her hair pulled back in a tight, disciplined bun. Her eyes, usually composed, held a dangerous glint. Miles stared, his jaw dropping. "You!" he exclaimed, his hand instinctively going to his holstered weapon. "What do you want? Trying to intimidate me now, are we?" He reached for his radio, a flicker of panic mixed with his indignation. "Put the radio down, detective," Eris said, her voice low, calm, but with an unmistakable edge of command. "And take your hand off your weapon. This conversation is not going on record." Miles hesitated. There was something in her tone, a quiet authority that transcended the normal boundaries of civilian interaction. But his wounded pride, his deeply ingrained prejudice, fought back. "I knew it," he sneered, pulling his hand away from his weapon, but keeping it hovering near. "You're not who you say you are. You're a criminal. I've been digging. I know about your fake identities, your blank spots, your travel." He spoke with a triumphant sneer, convinced he had exposed her. "I'm going to expose you, Thorne. The world will know what you really are." Eris's expression remained impassive, but her eyes hardened. "You don't know anything, detective, and your digging is about to put you in a situation far more dangerous than you can comprehend." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper, infused with the gravitas of a classified briefing. "The person you are investigating is involved in a highly classified national security operation. Your continued unauthorized inquiries are not only illegal, but they are jeopardizing an ongoing mission that involves a missing biogeneticist and potentially weaponized pathogens." Miles scoffed. "Pathogens? What kind of nonsense is this? Are you trying to scare me? You think I'm going to believe that fairy tale?" He still clung to his belief that she was simply a sophisticated criminal, spinning elaborate lies. His prejudice, his inability to imagine a black woman in such a role, prevented him from even entertaining the possibility of her truth. Eris sighed, a hint of weariness in her voice. "I didn't want to do this, detective, but you leave me no choice." She reached across the console of her car and activated a small, unseen device. A faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the air. "Your communications are now jammed. Your vehicle's GPS is disabled. We are off the grid." Miles's eyes widened in alarm. He instinctively checked his radio, then his GPS. Nothing. Just static. His bravado began to falter. This wasn't a criminal. This was something else entirely. Something beyond his understanding, beyond his jurisdiction. "Now," Eris continued, her voice gaining a steely edge, "you have two choices. You can continue your vendetta, and I assure you, it will end your career, destroy your life, and put national security at grave risk. Or you can listen. You can accept that there are things beyond your understanding, and you can stand down, for your own safety, and for the safety of others." Miles stared at her, the sudden chilling reality of his situation washing over him. The deserted street, the jammed radio, the quiet, almost menacing calm of the woman before him. She wasn't just talking about him losing his job. He finally understood the gravity of her words. He was truly, utterly alone, facing a force he couldn't comprehend, let alone control. He was in her gauntlet now. The ultimate test had begun, not in a courtroom, but in the desolate quiet of a rainy night, where the lines between law and covert operations blurred into a dangerous, high-stakes game. The sudden chilling silence in Miles Corbin's patrol car was more deafening than any siren. His radio, dead. His GPS, useless. The realization that Eris Thorne, the cleaning lady he'd scorned in court, was now sitting calmly in an unmarked car, having effortlessly neutralized his comms, sent a jolt of icy fear through him. The deserted, rain-slicked road stretched out, amplifying his isolation. He was truly, utterly alone, facing a force he couldn't comprehend. His bravado, his smug certainty, began to crack under the weight of this unforeseen power. What is this?" Miles stammered, his voice losing its earlier arrogance, replaced by a tremor of genuine apprehension. He gripped the steering wheel, his eyes wide, darting between Aris's impassive face and the dark, rain-streaked windows. Eris leaned back, her composure absolute, a stark contrast to Miles's rising panic. "This, detective," she stated, her voice devoid of emotion, "is a demonstration. A very small demonstration of the capabilities you are currently jeopardizing. As I said, you have two choices. Your vendetta against me is not only misguided, but dangerous. It's interfering with an ongoing classified operation." Miles scoffed, a desperate attempt to regain control, to cling to his own version of reality. "Classified operation? You're a public disturbance case, a woman who resisted arrest. You think I'm going to believe this spy movie garbage?" His ingrained prejudice, his inability to reconcile her appearance with her claims, was a powerful, stubborn wall. He couldn't fathom a black woman, in this suburban setting, being part of anything beyond the mundane. Eris's eyes hardened, a flicker of something akin to exasperation crossing her face. "You asked for proof, detective. You dug for it, and now you've found enough to be a critical liability. The scientist I am looking for, Dr. Elias Vance, is believed to be held in an abandoned research facility. His work, Project Nightingale, involves highly potent biogenetic material. If he is used against us, the consequences will be catastrophic. Your continued inquiries into my identity are like shining a spotlight on a ghost, alerting the very people I am trying to neutralize." Miles stared, his mind struggling to process the information. Biogenetic material? Weaponized pathogens? It sounded insane, like something out of a thriller novel. Yet, the conviction in her voice, the chilling ease with which she had disabled his equipment, spoke volumes. He began to feel a profound, nauseating dread. He was out of his depth, far, far out of his depth. This was the breath-holding moment. Miles, caught between his desperate need to believe his own narrative and the terrifying reality unfolding before him, felt a profound internal struggle. His pride screamed at him to fight, to reject her claims. But his survival instincts, finely tuned by years on the streets, warned him to listen. He could feel the weight of his earlier arrogance pressing down on him, the foolishness of his blind pursuit. For a long, tense moment, the only sounds were the drumming rain on the car roof and the frantic pounding of Miles's own heart. His future, perhaps his life, hung in the balance, dependent on his next move. Then, Eris pulled out a small encrypted tablet from beneath her seat. She didn't offer it to him, but held it up, angled so he could see. The screen displayed a complex topological map, overlaid with fluctuating thermal signatures and intricate data streams. A series of cryptic alphanumeric codes scrolled rapidly across the bottom. "This is the last known location of Dr. Vance, confirmed just hours ago," Eris stated, her voice quiet, almost academic. "The facility is highly secured, off-grid. His captors are anticipating a rescue attempt. They are moving him. My window for extraction is narrowing. Every minute you spend trying to expose me, every unauthorized query you run, sends ripples into their network. They will connect those ripples to me, and if they identify me, they will execute Vance and deploy his research." As she spoke, she manipulated the tablet, zooming in on a specific point on the map. It showed a cluster of abandoned industrial buildings on the city's forgotten outskirts, a place Miles knew well from old, forgotten police reports of squatters and minor vandalism. Then she opened a secure comms channel, and a distorted voice, tinny and urgent, filled the car's interior. It was a rapid-fire exchange of classified intelligence, spoken in a language Miles didn't understand, but whose clipped professional urgency was unmistakable. He heard terms like target acquisition, exfil route, and containment protocols. He saw a flash of a satellite image, grainy but clear, showing armed figures moving within the dilapidated compound. Miles's mind reeled. This wasn't a show. This was real. The detailed map, the live intel, the specific names and locations, it was overwhelming proof. The reality of Project Nightingale and the imminent threat of bioweapons finally broke through his stubborn prejudice. His image of Eris Thorne as a defiant civilian, then a criminal, shattered, replaced by the chilling truth. She was a highly trained elite operative, engaged in a mission with global consequences. His investigation had not just jeopardized her, but the world. He looked at Eris, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw not a black woman who resisted arrest, but a disciplined professional, a warrior carrying an unimaginable burden. The quiet authority she exuded, once dismissed as arrogance, was now clearly the command presence of a leader. The unwavering gaze that had unnerved him in court now spoke of steely resolve. He was just a local cop, caught in the terrifying crosscurrents of a world far beyond his comprehension. The reactions of the witnesses in this isolated, impromptu confrontation were entirely Miles Corbin's own. His face, initially pale with fear, now morphed into a grim mask of shock and dawning horror. The smug smirk he had worn in court was long gone, replaced by a profound sense of foolishness, then shame. He, a protector of justice, had almost inadvertently become an accomplice to a global catastrophe, all because of his pride and prejudice. His chest tightened, a cold knot of dread settling in his stomach. He had lied in court, not just about a traffic stop, but about a person whose integrity was absolute, whose purpose was noble. His actions had been petty, vindictive, and almost catastrophic. The weight of his misjudgment was crushing. "So," Eris said, her voice cutting through his internal turmoil, "do you stand down, detective? Or do you continue to be a liability?" Her tone was not accusatory, but rather a quiet challenge, a demand for him to choose, to see the larger picture. Miles swallowed hard, his throat dry. He thought of his career, his family, the quiet life he had built. He thought of the potential for global devastation, a future where weaponized pathogens could unleash untold horrors. His own pride, his ingrained biases, suddenly seemed insignificant, pathetic in the face of such a terrifying reality. He slowly, deliberately, removed his hand from his holstered weapon. Then, with a profound sense of humility, he reached for his disabled radio and placed it gently on the dashboard. He met Oris's gaze, his eyes reflecting a newfound respect and a dawning understanding. I stand down," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. What can I do?" A faint, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement from Eris. "Go home, detective," she said, her voice softening slightly. "Forget you saw me. Forget this conversation, and trust that justice will be served, in ways you cannot comprehend." She then, with a professional detachment that left Miles stunned, explained a precise, simple action he could take to unwittingly help her, without knowing its true purpose. A specific, seemingly random traffic alert he could issue on his regular channels, a coded message that would redirect enemy surveillance away from her true target. It was a minor, almost innocuous act, but in the intricate dance of covert operations, it would be a crucial diversion. Miles Corbin, the white cop who had confidently lied about the black woman in court, now sat silently, a stunned witness to her true power, humbled by her extraordinary identity, and utterly unmasked by the terrifying reality he had so narrowly averted. His world, once so clearly defined by his own prejudices, had been irrevocably shattered, leaving him with a chilling understanding of the unseen forces that moved beneath the surface of everyday life. He had underestimated her, judged her, and almost doomed them all. And now, he was a silent, unwitting participant in her high-stakes game. The rain had stopped, but the chill of the night still clung to the air as Detective Miles Corbin drove away from the deserted road. His hands, gripping the steering wheel, were slick with sweat despite the cool interior of his patrol car. The hum of his disabled comms was a constant, mocking reminder of the power Eris Thorne wielded, a chilling testament to the terrifying reality he had just witnessed. His carefully constructed world, built on assumptions and biases, had shattered into a million pieces. The public disturbance case had exploded into a clandestine world of global threats and elite operatives, a world where he was nothing more than an unwitting, almost fatal liability. He executed the seemingly random traffic alert Eris had instructed him to issue, his fingers moving stiffly over the console. It felt absurd, a mundane police action imbued with a secret, life-or-death purpose he couldn't grasp. Yet, he did it without question, a profound sense of humility now outweighing his earlier pride. He was a small, insignificant cog in a machine he didn't understand, but he had chosen to turn in the right direction. Back at his apartment, Miles sat in the quiet darkness, unable to sleep. The image of Eris, calm and powerful in the dim light, haunted him. Her words, weaponized pathogens, echoed in his mind, bringing a cold dread that far surpassed his fear of professional repercussions. He thought of his own family, safe in their beds, oblivious to the unseen dangers their world faced. He had come so close to exposing a hero, to aiding a villain, all because of his own narrow-mindedness, his inability to see beyond the surface. The shame was a bitter taste in his mouth, a stark contrast to the smug satisfaction he'd felt in court just hours before. This was the shattering of the misguided supporter, a complete and painful realization of his deeply flawed perspective. He had been so wrong, so dangerously, arrogantly wrong. The following morning, news filtered through the police department. Victor Sterling had been apprehended in a massive, coordinated federal operation linked to an international network dealing in illegal bioweapons and human trafficking. The details were scarce, shrouded in layers of national security, but the implications were clear. Sterling, the man Miles had almost helped to ruin Daniel Hayes, was a far more dangerous criminal than he could have ever imagined. The arrest confirmed the terrifying truth of Eris's words, a truth so vast and terrifying that it made his own petty courtroom lies seem utterly insignificant. Daniel Hayes, meanwhile, still reeling from the events in his office, had taken swift action. Armed with Anya Petrova's invaluable insight and the irrefutable evidence she had provided, his legal team had worked through the night to not only secure Victor Sterling's initial arrest, but to dismantle his web of shell corporations and fraudulent assets. The Project Chimera contract, once a looming threat, was now a powerful tool to expose Sterling's broader criminal enterprise. Hayes publicly announced his firm's commitment to ethical finance and launched a major internal investigation into any past dealings with Sterling Financial, determined to cleanse his company of any lingering corruption. He offered his full cooperation to the federal agencies now involved, providing them with critical financial intelligence that expedited Sterling's capture and the recovery of Dr. Elias Vance and his research. Dr. Vance, though traumatized, was safe, and Project Nightingale had been secured. A few days later, Marcus Thorne, Eris's public defender, received an anonymous notification. The public disturbance charge against Commander Eris Thorne had been officially dismissed, due to new evidence and for reasons of national security. He shook his head, a bewildered smile on his face. He'd never seen a case vanish so completely. He sent Eris a brief, congratulatory email, still unaware of the true depths of her identity. Miles Corbin, now stripped of his earlier arrogance, found himself seeking out Judge Eleanor Vance. He walked into her chambers, his posture no longer rigid with self-importance, but bowed with a newfound humility. "Your Honor," he began, his voice raspy, I need to amend my previous testimony in the case of Commander Eris Thorne. I realize now that my perception of events was deeply flawed. I allowed personal bias to color my judgment." He admitted to his subtle exaggerations, his dismissive attitude, his failure to truly listen to Eris. His confession was unprompted, born from a profound, agonizing self-reflection. He offered to face any disciplinary action, any consequence. Judge Vance listened, her expression unreadable. She had seen countless officers testify, and rarely had she witnessed such a genuine, unbidden admission of error. She understood the weight of his confession, the courage it took. "Detective Corbin," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Your honesty, however belated, is noted. The internal review will proceed, but I will ensure that your willingness to acknowledge your mistakes is taken into account. She paused, her gaze softening slightly. It takes a remarkable person to truly see their own blind spots. Her words were a subtle validation, an acknowledgement of the painful growth Miles was undergoing. Several weeks passed. The media frenzy around Victor Sterling's capture gradually subsided. Dr. Vance was safely debriefed, his research secured. The world, oblivious to the quiet heroism that had prevented a global catastrophe, returned to its mundane rhythms. One afternoon, Miles Corbin received an unexpected visitor at his precinct, Daniel Hayes. Miles was surprised, unsure why the prominent millionaire would seek him out. "Detective Corbin," Daniel said, extending his hand, his demeanor serious but respectful. "I believe you had an encounter with Commander Eris Thorne." Miles tensed, memories of the rainy night flooding back. "Yes, sir, I did." Daniel nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "She's a remarkable woman, extraordinary in ways most of us can barely comprehend. She's responsible for saving me and many others from a very dark future." He paused, his gaze fixed on Miles. "She also indicated that you made a choice, a difficult one, under extreme pressure, and you chose correctly." Miles felt a profound sense of relief, a quiet acknowledgement of his actions from someone who understood. "I also know," Daniel continued, "that your reputation has taken a hit, and that you're facing an internal review." He extended a business card. "My firm is expanding its ethics and compliance division. We are looking for individuals with a unique understanding of how deception works and who have the courage to admit when they've been wrong. We value honesty, even when it's painful." He looked directly into Miles's eyes. "It's a very different kind of law enforcement. One focused on prevention, on exposing the unseen threats that operate in the shadows of the financial world. You saw some of that, didn't you, Detective?" Miles stared at the card, then back at Daniel. It was an olive branch, an unexpected, meaningful new opportunity. Not just a job, but a chance at redemption, a new path where his unique, albeit painfully learned insights could be used for true justice. It wasn't about catching petty criminals anymore. It was about fighting the unseen architects of global harm. This opportunity, far from a consolation prize, was a profound validation, a chance to apply his skills with integrity and purpose, transforming him from a misguided supporter into a genuine force for good. His confession, his humility, had opened a door he never knew existed. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," Miles said, his voice quiet, sincere. I would be honored." The two men, an unlikely pair, shook hands. The weight of Miles's past judgment still lingered, a stark reminder of his mistakes. But now, it was a lesson, not a burden. He had faced his flaws, admitted his errors, and found a new purpose, forged in the crucible of a terrifying night and the quiet courage of a woman he had once dismissed. A new calm settled over him, not the calm of ignorance, but the quiet peace of understanding, and the profound potential of a shared burden for a greater good. 2 years later, the scent of blooming jasmine mingled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee in Anya Petrova's spacious, sunlit apartment. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable, filled with natural light and the quiet hum of a life finally lived with dignity. Bookcases lined one wall, filled not with cheap paperbacks, but with volumes on finance, law, and global economics, testaments to Anya's voracious, self-taught intellect. Lena, now 18, thrived at a prestigious university, her tuition fully covered by a scholarship she had earned and the quiet, steady support of her grandmother's newfound stability. Her laughter, bright and carefree, often echoed through the rooms, a melody that Anya cherished above all else. Anya herself was transformed. No longer the invisible cleaning lady, she was now a highly respected senior financial risk consultant at Daniel Hayes' firm, known throughout the industry for her uncanny ability to dissect complex contracts and uncover hidden layers of fraud. Her uniform had been replaced by elegant, tailored business attire, worn with an understated confidence that spoke volumes. She commanded respect in boardrooms, her voice clear and articulate, her insights sharp and often prescient. Yet, despite her professional elevation, Anya remained fundamentally unchanged in her core values: grounded, meticulously honest, and deeply empathetic. She never forgot where she came from, or the struggles that had forged her unique perspective. Her work with Daniel Hayes had flourished. Together, they had exposed several more elaborate schemes, protecting countless individuals and companies from predatory financial practices. Daniel, true to his word, had redefined his firm's mission, emphasizing ethical investment and corporate social responsibility. He credited Anya with not just saving his company, but with fundamentally reshaping his understanding of integrity and justice. But Anya's impact extended far beyond the confines of corporate finance. This was her paying it forward in action. Together with Daniel, she co-founded the Petrova Hayes Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing pro bono legal and financial aid to victims of fraud and exploitation, particularly vulnerable immigrants and the elderly who lacked the resources or voice to fight back. Anya poured her heart into the foundation, often spending evenings and weekends counseling victims, reviewing their documents, and sharing her own story. "They thought I was just a cleaning lady," she would tell them, her eyes warm with understanding. "They thought I couldn't understand. But sometimes, when you are unseen, you see more clearly. And when you have lost everything, you learn how to fight for what is right." Her story, shared in humble community centers and bustling legal aid clinics, became a powerful beacon of hope, inspiring countless individuals to reclaim their dignity and seek justice. She taught them to look for the fine print, not just in contracts but in life itself, to trust their instincts and to demand accountability. The foundation grew rapidly, a testament to the enduring need for its services. Anya, once isolated, was now at the center of a vibrant network of lawyers, social workers, and activists, all dedicated to the cause of justice. She lectured at universities, consulted with legal aid societies, and contributed to policy discussions on consumer protection, her once whispered warnings now amplified into a powerful, resonant voice. One crisp autumn afternoon, Anya stood on a brightly lit stage at a major financial ethics conference, addressing an audience of hundreds of industry leaders, policymakers, and aspiring professionals. She wore a simple, elegant navy suit, her silver locket, no longer tarnished but polished to a soft gleam, resting against her chest. The scar on her forearm, once a hidden badge of pain, was now a visible testament to her extraordinary resilience. "For years," she began, her voice calm and clear, filling the vast auditorium, "I was the unseen architect. I moved through your offices, dusting your desks, emptying your wastebaskets. You didn't see me, you didn't hear me. And because of that, you often missed the subtle signs of decay, the quiet whispers of corruption, hiding in plain sight." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the rapt faces in the audience. "My story is not just about a cleaning lady who uncovered a fraud. It is a reminder that value, truth, and courage are not defined by titles, or wealth, or perceived status. They can emerge from the most unexpected places, from the invisible hands that hold your world together." A ripple of understanding, then admiration, spread through the room. Anya, the woman who had once been dismissed as nobody, stood before them as an undeniable force, a powerful voice for ethical conduct and social justice. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader, a mentor, and a living embodiment of the profound impact one individual, however humble their beginnings, could have on the world. The unseen architect had finally stepped into the light, and her vision was illuminating a path towards a more just and equitable future. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.